I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday. It means we're brought to you by Sagrera Farms, premium Angus beef. Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, fired up here with us, working towards the weekend. Luke Johnson in 15 minutes. He's been at Saints training camp the last 2 days. They just got finished talking to Tyler Shuck after his second day of practice. So we'll talk to Luke Johnson in 15 minutes. Looking very much forward to that. Got an ESPN story, swing games for every top 25 college football team in 2025. What does that mean for LSU? Dallin Holker has stepped away from the Saints. I want to talk about that and the Saints tight end group as a whole. Also, want to talk about Tony Petitti's petition for the new college football playoff and where I stand on that suggestion we heard from the microphone in Las Vegas yesterday. So we'll get to all that over the course of the next 2 hours. So lock us in. We'll start the way we do every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
All right, I'm going through every position group on LSU's football team as we get ready for fall camp, which is approaching rapidly. It'll be here a week from today. And I talked about tight ends on LouisianaSports.net today. Now, the reasonable suggestion in general terms, when you lose the most productive player in the history of the school at any position in any sport, you would suggest, okay, probably going to take a big step back there. Like if you've got the greatest pitcher in the history of LSU baseball, like that's going to be tough to replace. You got the greatest three-point shooter in the history of LSU basketball, that's going to be tough to replace. You go to gymnastics and you've got the greatest vaulter in the history of the school, like that's going to be tough to replace. And Mason Taylor is the most productive tight end in the history of LSU football. You're well aware of that now. He holds the record for most career receptions. That's 129. And most career yards receiving. That's 1,308 in LSU football history among tight ends. And so you got to replace him. And that feels like a monumental task. But I talked about this in the spring, and I still believe it as we sit here in the late summer as fall approaches. I think LSU is going to replace that quite adequately. When you look at what you got from the tight end position last year, that was Mason Taylor with a little bit of Kamorian Pimpton and a little bit of Trades Green. That trio, which was obviously dominated by Taylor, who played the vast majority of the snaps, but that trio came up with a combined total of 726 yards and 4 touchdowns. I would suggest, as I sit here today, that Trades Green, Bauer Sharp, and Donovan Green will equal 726 yards and 4 touchdowns. Do you realize, and this is a little bit more of chance instead of consistent production, but last year, Mason Taylor had 2 touchdown catches. Trades Green had 2 touchdown catches in the bowl game when Mason Taylor opted out. Mason Taylor, I am not by any stretch of the imagination sullying his career at LSU. It was brilliant. He stepped on the field as a true freshman, was ready to play, made the biggest catch of the season in overtime, beat Alabama. He rolled up records. He was awesome for 3 years. He was a model teammate, model classmate, goes in the second round of the NFL draft. Like, that is a remarkably good career. And I'm not trying to dampen that in any way. But I am going to point out that Mason Taylor is 6'5", 250. He runs a 4.65 40. He did it pro day. That would have been second among tight ends in the combine. But he's not like what you would call some sort of matchup nightmare. He's not someone you just can't replace. Like, to go back to the analogy I just used with the most productive such and such in school history, it's hard to replace Paul Skeen's 101-mile-an-hour fastball. Like, the next guy's just not going to have that. You look at some of the traits of some of the elite players, like, you're not going to replace Jaden Daniels' 1,000 yards of rushing just with the next guy. Like, that's really hard to do when there's a skill set that someone has that's just not very easy to find. Guys that are 6'5", 245, 250, and run a 4.6, like, you can find one of those on every SEC team. Now, Mason runs great routes. He has phenomenal hands. I don't remember many drops at all from Mason Taylor. He blocked well and found spaces in defenses, worked the intermediate part of the field very well. He did all the things that you want a tight end to do. But he doesn't have any skill that Bauer Sharp athletically doesn't have. Trey'Dez Green is significantly more gifted physically than Mason Taylor is. And so while I would argue that Bauer Sharp has not been nearly as productive as Mason Taylor, and that's an easy argument to make in Oklahoma's terrible passing game, and Trey'Dez Green does not have the ability yet as a run blocker like Mason Taylor did, even though Mason Taylor wasn't an elite run blocker, he was certainly better than Trey'Dez Green. He's a more complete player, a more polished player than the two that LSU will feature this year. I wouldn't suggest that LSU's guys this year cannot do anything that Mason Taylor did over the last 3 years. Trey'Dez Green gives LSU a weapon in the passing game that I don't think there is a single defensive player that is a great matchup for Trey'Dez Green. There is not, I can say this without looking it up and with confidence. LSU's not going to face a secondary player this year that's 6'7", 245 pounds, and can jump well enough to play SEC basketball. That guy doesn't exist. Not on Alabama's team, not on Ohio State's team if LSU gets to them, not on Clemson's team. Like, that guy, so just by the nature of his stature and athleticism, he's a matchup problem for everyone. And I think that shined through when he got his chance to play and they didn't have an option of going to Mason Taylor. I mean, you look at the snap counts last year between Mason Taylor and Trey'Dez Green, like, it was 862 to 191. Like, it's 4-1. Mason Taylor's, and that's fine. Like, that, it should have been. Mason Taylor's a great player. But, like, Trey'Dez Green played 191 snaps last year. Chris Hilton played 144. Like, those were comparable numbers. Chris Hilton was hurt the whole year. Mason Taylor just dominated the snap count. When Trey'Dez Green got his chance to play in the bowl game, because they didn't have Mason Taylor, he opted out. 6 catches, 53 yards, 2 touchdowns against Dave Aranda's defense. Like, I'm not telling you he's going to catch 15 scores this year. But I am telling you that Garrett Nussmeier is very comfortable throwing the ball to the tight end. We know that. He did it all last year to Mason Taylor. And he's got a weapon at tight end that he knows is there. And all due respect to the safeties and linebackers in the SEC, like, good luck with this dude. I think Trey'Dez Green is going to be more impactful in terms of, like, big plays, like big third downs and big touchdowns, than he's going to be a 1,300-yard receiver. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think that they've got what they know is a rare weapon, and they're going to use it. And I think Bauer Sharp at 6'5", 245, who's a really good athlete, is also going to have a nice year. This is Brian Kelly's offense. This is a guy that put tight end after tight end after tight end at Notre Dame into the NFL. Michael Mayer, Cole Kmet. I mean, these are the type of guys that he continued to churn out. Tyler Eifert in the early years. And that position, it's not a coincidence that he showed up and Mason Taylor just exploded into the record books. And they're still going to use this. So there are some question marks on this team. There are some guys LSU has to replace. I talked the last 2 days in this segment about how tough it's going to be to replace the tackles and the guards. And I said in those segments, like, it's probably going to be a step back. Like, how big the step back is will tell the tale. If the tackle is just a touch of a step back in pass pro, you're fine. If you fall off a cliff, you're in big trouble. The guards are probably not going to be quite as accomplished. It's Garrett Dellinger and Miles Frazier. But if it's a small step back, you're okay. At tight end, I don't think there is a step back. Like, I don't. I think LSU at tight end is really good. And I think it's a healthy position group because Trey'Dez Green has another year after this. Bauer Sharp will move on, but Donovan Green, who you brought in from Texas A&M, who was their newcomer of the year 3 years ago and missed a year with an ACL injury and then didn't play very much last year. Like, he's big and physical, 6'4", 250. He can get in there in goal line sets and in short yardage sets and block for you a little bit. And then you bring in J.D. LaFleur, who coincidentally, it's a great coincidence, time's a funny thing. Mason Taylor was a second-round pick as a tight end. That's the highest any tight end at LSU's gone since J.D. LaFleur's dad in 1997. So it's J.D. LaFleur comes in 6'7", 255, and he comes up with a football pedigree, a dad that played in the NFL, was a first-round pick. Like, he'll know what he's doing, and he'll be ready to go. So next year, I'm already looking at a tight end group that, yes, you'll have lost Bauer Sharp, but you'll have Trey'Dez Green, you'll have Donovan Green, you'll have J.D. LaFleur. That's healthy. And Brian Kelly's going to have a healthy tight end room as long as he's here at LSU. So, again, conventional wisdom would suggest, like, hey, you lost the best in the history of the school in terms of production, probably a big step back. Like Will Campbell, you lose him. I don't think so at tight end. I think LSU's tight ends quite easily go over 800 yards, quite easily go over 4 touchdowns. You've got a really good quarterback. You've got big-time talent, and you've got a matchup problem at tight end that I think defensive coordinators are going to have to look at every single week and pay attention to. Because if you just stick a linebacker on him, that's a nightmare. You just kind of have a safety, keep an eye on him, that's a nightmare. Baylor found that out. He's big, he's strong, he can jump, and he's got really good hands. And all you got to do is turn on that play from Tuscaloosa on the hardwood where he blocked a shot, ran it down, ran out a one-man fast break, and threw down a dunk. Like, there just aren't a lot of tight ends in the SEC or in college football, period, that can make that play on an SEC basketball floor against one of the best teams in the country in Alabama. Like, he's a freak, and he needs to be used as such. Last year, you didn't have to rush him to the field. You could put some weight on him, try to help him out in the blocking game, but you had a guy that was perfectly content playing 95% of the snaps. And Mason Taylor just about did. But LSU, we saw in spring, they're going to put 2 tight ends out there. Sharp and Green are going to play at the same time. They're going to be physical. They're going to throw the ball to them. I think that the tight ends are going to be a huge part of this offense, even in Mason Taylor's absence. So I'm very bullish on LSU's tight end group as a whole this season in their production, even though you've lost one of the best to do it in the purple and gold. That's the start of today's show. We're brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. We got lots and lots to do today. The Saints were on the practice field for training camp day 2 today. Luke Johnson's been there for both days. They heard from Tyler Shuck today. We'll talk to Luke when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. I was at Airline and PQ today at Genesis of Baton Rouge. How about this? When you have your car delivered and it's there at the dealership and you're there to pick it up, but you got to test out all the features and have someone show you how everything works. Well, Genesis is happy to do that, but it's July. And sitting in a dealership lot when it's 1,000 degrees is not all that comfortable. Well, Genesis took care of that. Climate control. They pull it into a room that's right there off the showroom. It's climate controlled, so you can sit in the comfort of the air conditioning and go through all the bells and whistles of your brand new Genesis. It's things like that separate Genesis as an experience when you're shopping for a vehicle. I got behind the wheel today of a GV80. Let me tell you, it's awesome. Mid-size SUV. It's the fuller of the 2 GV80s. You got the GV80 Coupe as well, which is a little bit more sporty. If you're looking for an SUV, get on by Genesis of Baton Rouge and check it out. You'll be incredibly impressed with the ambiance of the dealership. It feels like a spa. It feels like a 5-star resort as opposed to a car dealership. The people are wonderful, and the line of vehicles is fantastic. They take care of you with details like that climate control showroom where they can show you your brand new vehicle. Get on by Genesis of Baton Rouge. See them Airline at PQ. Visit them online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms, premium Angus beef. Jacob Beck, esteemed producer here at the Hunt Palmer Show, just informed me that we need to talk about the Brewers with Luke Johnson. In fact, it's my show. My name's on it. We will not talk about the Brewers at all. There's a Brewers moratorium, and anybody that breaks that is in massive trouble. Luke, how are you?
Go Brewers, man.
Oh,
they're killing it. They're killing
Go away. Go away. Bad players, never heard of any of them, win every game. Dodgers swept them at home. Dodgers swept them on the road. This is unacceptable.
Yeah. We got our big dumb idiot college coach who's somehow working as a manager, and I love him. I love him like the weird uncle who you don't want to. Your dad doesn't want you to hang out with because he's going to slip you a couple beers. Yeah.
I stole your coach. I stole your coach. Your coach is mine. I should be beating you.
Well. Good luck with him. He's dead to me, and I've come to realize that he sucked the entire time. Hope you're happy with him.
Well, he's doing a good job. I'm just put out with the Milwaukee Brewers. Let's talk about football because it's technically football season, I guess, at the end of July. Saints have had 2 days of training camp. I can't bury the lead in any way here. Talk quarterbacks with me. What have you seen through 2 days?
Yeah, a lot of up and down, which is what you expect. You know, none of them has looked really super sharp. I think if I were to put a power rankings on it, I'd say Rattler has looked the best through 2 days, but he's made his mistakes too. He had a interception today on a ball he was trying to throw away, just kind of floated it up, and Quincy Riley picked him off. So I expect them to look a lot better as training camp progresses. I don't know what that actually means. I don't know if that means they're going to be successful NFL quarterbacks this year, but I think that they're kind of working on some rust right now.
I know yesterday Rattler got the majority, all the first team reps actually, and Kellen Moore said that was kind of a seniority deal. Did that flip today?
Yep. Tyler Shuck worked with the ones today. Rattler worked with the twos, and Hayner was rocking with the threes. We saw very, very little Hunter Deckers, which is probably going to be the case for him throughout most of training camp. He's going to get maybe 1 or 2 reps a day. So I would expect we'll see some Jake Hayner with the ones tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day of a 3-day stretch before they take Saturday off. So I'm curious if Jake gets all of the 1 reps tomorrow because he's worked primarily with the threes so far.
Here's a difficult question to know, but I want your thoughts. How much of what the Saints are doing with the quarterbacks right now is finding out who the best quarterback is, and how much are they looking at trying to get a quarterback for this team and make sure this team is as good as it can be?
That's like the $1 million question, right? Is it about finding out who the future guy is, if they have the future guy in it, or is it about going out and trying to win in week 1? I think those are potentially 2 different things. They might be the same thing, but potentially 2 different things. I think there's definitely a chance that let's say Spencer Rattler wins the training camp competition, but there's this seed of a plan in the back of their mind that at some point it's going to be Tyler Shuck. That might be the case, but it might also be that one of these guys just seizes it as this thing progresses and is the guy who is both somebody who thinks it gives them the best chance in week 1 with this team and potentially to be their future quarterback. I think it's just way too early to say at this point.
Give me a feel for how Kellen Moore and I'm blanking on Garrett's dad's name, Doug Nussmeier.
Doug. Yeah.
Doug's Nussmeier. How are they? What are their in terms of how hands-on they are with the actual quarterbacks during practice? What's the relationship like there?
I think pretty hands-on. The same thing goes for Scott Tolzien, their quarterbacks coach, and I think there's a reason for that. I mean, all 3 of those guys are former NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the reasons that made them comfortable with not going into this season with a veteran. I don't think they need somebody who's going to show them the ropes to how to do it because, Kellen Moore was a player 8 years ago, So, I think those guys are kind of taking a very hands-on approach and are kind of in these guys' ears. And you can hear it just in the way they are answering questions. We had a chance to talk to the quarterbacks after practice today, and Tyler Shuck's talking about how he's processing the play, and he's hearing Scott Tolzien's voice in his head, with this little mantra that he keeps repeating. and it led to Shuck having making a throwaway instead of trying to force something. So I think that's a big part of what they're doing here with these young quarterbacks, is leaning on the experience of the coaching staff. And you got to throw Scott Linehan in there too. I mean, he's kind of in an advisory role here, but he's playing an important one, and he's not somebody who played the game professionally at quarterback, but he's got a ton of experience, a high level experience, and I think they're playing a huge role in those guys' development.
Talking with Luke Johnson, NOLA.com, covering the Saints, been out there for a couple days at practice. What do you think the relationship between Shuck and Rattler is like right now?
Yeah, it's kind of tough to pin down. Like, I think they're saying the right stuff about it, but yeah, at the end of the day, they're competing for the same job. It's like they're like about the same age. They have a lot of similar stuff in their background. They're both from the Phoenix area. They kind of grew up in the same circles. But they are still, kind of at each other's throats in a way. It's friendly, but I don't think they're like hanging out and going playing golf after practice. Maybe they are. But I think there's a competitive edge to the room, which is, in my opinion, healthy. They just don't. They don't strike me as guys who are like buddy, and I don't know if anybody in that quarterback room is really wired that way.
And that's okay. They're out there competing for literally their careers at this point and trying to be a starting quarterback. So you figure there's certainly competition there. As long as it stays, as you meant, amicable, then everything's on the up and up. I think at this point,
I do want to clarify that. Like, I don't think it's I don't think it's going to be like toxic at any stage. I don't think it's like that. But I just don't think that they're like, it's like going to each other's houses afterwards to play Call of Duty or whatever. And, I just think they're in a competition. They're friendly enough, and I don't think it's ever going to be like one guy loses it and he's a problem for the locker room. If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I think at this stage of camp, they're not even in full pads at this point. They're not doing much of anything in terms of contact. So injuries or would be the main story of non-contact stuff. Does it seem like a pretty healthy team at this point?
Yep. 2 days in, full practice attendance. The only two guys we're, kind of keeping an eye on, obviously, are Foster Moreau and Taysom Hill. Both of them started camp on the PUP list. But, so far so good. Obviously, knock on all the wood you want to if you're a Saints fan. It's been probably their biggest issue the last couple of years, and a team with a lot of issues.
Olave and Shaheed running nicely. Are they the first two wide receivers out there?
Yeah. I mean, those guys are awesome, man. I really, really hope they stay healthy because they're so much fun to watch. And it's funny, because they're doing a competition, they're trying to get all of these quarterbacks reps with Olave and Shaheed. So it's really funny watching those guys go up against the third string, fringe NFL guys, and to see the quarterbacks immediately go where's Olave? Just gotta get him the ball, Tyler Shuck's best throw of the day, went to Shaheed for a touchdown, and he's just back foot, and he's oh, well, Shaheed's got 4 steps on the guy. I'm just going to fling it out there for him. They're really, really fun players, really good players. And I hope we get a chance to see what they look like together for a full season, because they were, Olave kind of started a little bit slow last year by his standards, but when they are right, they're really special, really dynamic, and put a lot of stress on defenses. So I hope we get to see it.
And then after them, you've got Cooks, and then what? What are we looking at out there right now?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hope that Bub Means takes a step. It's Cedric Wilson's done some nice stuff in Kellen Moore's offenses in the past, but that was years ago. I don't think I would feel really comfortable going into a season relying on Cedric Wilson to be the guy. Mason Tipton, I think he's got uphill battle making the team. I mean, it's just nobody's really separated themselves to this point. I think Bub is the guy I've got the most confidence in, developing into a legitimate receiving option as a 3 or 4 wide receiver. But yeah, let's just be honest. I mean, if you're basing it off of what they have done before, what they've done recently, you would really want them to get another receiver to help that room before the start of the regular season. Maybe one of these guys takes off. That's a legitimate possibility. It happens all the time. but yeah, just based off of what we know now, I just say it just doesn't look very deep behind those guys.
Last guy I want to mention on the offensive side, running back Kendre Miller. How's he look, and where is he in the depth chart right now?
Yeah, and he's on the field, which is good, right? Like it was like we were like 5 minutes into the first training camp practice last year when he blew out his hamstring and missed like 5 weeks. So I think we just gotta see if he can stay on the field, and then that's first and foremost. And the second part of it is I think he's going to have some competition to make the roster. Like they went out and added Cam Akers, who I think has looked fine. You got Clyde here, who's got a lot of NFL experience, does a lot of things other than running the football, which helps his case. And you got a rookie running back in Devin Neal, and they were kicking the tires on Nick Chubb before he signed with the Houston Texans. So I don't think it's a guarantee he makes the team. He's got to show something in addition to staying on the field. So it's a little bit too early to stay with him. I think it's going to be a lot more evident once pads come on. But if he's right, if he's in the right headspace, if he's healthy, I think he could be a really explosive back. But he's got a lot to prove in that regard.
People are frothing for camp coverage. Tell them where they can find all your stuff, video, print, everything.
Yeah. You can find all of our written stuff over at NOLA.com. I've got a story coming up this afternoon about how the quarterbacks are kind of handling this competition mentally. And you can just look up all of our video, our podcast stuff you can find anywhere. You get your podcast, all the videos on YouTube at Saints Insider.
We appreciate the help, and stay cool out there. We'll talk next week.
Sounds good, buddy.
Luke Johnson with NOLA.com and The Advocate. Saints out there on the practice field. Fans are locked in. It's football time down there in New Orleans. We got 1 week until LSU puts the helmets on, gets out there on the Ponderosa, fired up for all of that. You can find all of our Saints coverage at Hunt on Saints, wherever you find your podcasts, and, of course, on YouTube as well. And Hunt on LSU when that stuff cranks up here coming up in a week. All right, speaking of LSU, swing games for every top 25 college football team. What does ESPN think LSU's biggest swing game is, and what do I think the biggest swing game is? We'll talk about that next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is that website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. It doesn't have to be a huge renovation. David's actually working on a huge renovation right now. Talked to him yesterday, trying to find time to nail down and get some breakfast, but he's busy, and that's a good thing. You don't have to do a 2-3 week long renovation, remodel. You can do something simple like a tub to shower conversion that can be done rather quickly, cost effectively. It changes the entire way your bathroom looks and functions. If you need a freshener in the bathroom, you live in maybe an older home or got something that doesn't function properly, get a new glass walk-in shower. David Duvall can do it at One Bath and Closets. Get a free consultation. Start with the consultation at OneBathAndClosets.com. You can also look at pictures of their fantastic work right there on the website. It's One Bath and Closets, OneBathAndClosets.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
If you're looking for somewhere to be on Saturday night, Baton Rouge Rougarou having Skip Bertman night out at Pete Goolsbee Field. You can purchase a copy of Glenn Gilbo's book, Everything Matters in Baseball, and Coach Bertman will be there to sign it. You can take photos behind the third base dugout as well. They'll honor Coach Bertman alongside some other LSU baseball legends at 7 o'clock, and then game time is at 7. Skip's grandson, Ezra Pate, will pitch for the Rougarou on Saturday night. So if you'd like to have a chance to go out, get a book, get a picture with Coach Bertman, and get an autographed copy of the book, you can be there at Pete Goolsbee Field at 7 o'clock on Saturday night. Our Thursday shows are brought to you by Sagrera Farms. Let's talk a little bit about swing games in college football. ESPN.com put a feature up on their college football page. Took all the top 25 teams and talked about the biggest game on their schedule. And I don't think this is going to be a monster surprise to any of you, but the swing game that they identified was at Clemson, August the 30th. The blurb reads, LSU's 0-3 in season openers under Brian Kelly. If there was a year to change that and set the table for the season, this is it. Cade Klubnik, expected by many to be among the best quarterbacks in college football this season, with Clemson primed for another run into the CFP. LSU looks just about as talented and ready to make a national championship push as any team in the country, but the Tigers need to look closer to their final form from the jump than they have in recent years. And I think that's completely fair assessment. I'm not here to disagree with that in any way. The game against Clemson, I think, is massive, especially if you win it. If LSU wins this game on the road, that's a leg up on just about everybody. And it creates a little bit of wiggle room moving forward. Now, if you lose, I still think if you finish 9-1 down the stretch, 10-1 down the stretch, I should say, that you're fine. But that's really hard to do, obviously. If I were to try to get off the season opener, that's very difficult to do because we all know how big a deal it is. And we'll talk about it until we're blue in the face for the next 35 days or however long it is. And we'll be primed for that game when it happens. And every LSU fan is going to lock in, and every LSU fan is going to be white-knuckling that thing until the very end and to see if LSU, in fact, loses 6 straight openers. I get the whole thing. But also, I want to look at the rest of the schedule and see if I can't identify maybe another game that, to me, is a quote-unquote swing game. And as I roll through, I really look at one that feels massive. And it's probably not one that everyone else is looking at. It's week 3 when Florida comes to Tiger Stadium. Because conceivably, your season could just about come crashing down at that point. Because if you've lost at Clemson, hypothetically, and you beat Louisiana Tech in week 2, and you come back and lose a home league game to Florida, like, the energy level in this place is going to be zero. Now, if you beat Clemson and lose at home to Florida, that'll be a gut punch, obviously. But let's just say, for grins, that LSU loses to Clemson. They've lost that game. Okay, you come back and beat Tech. We've run this song and dance 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a row. Be number 6. And then Florida comes in. If you win that game against Florida, then you go play Southeastern Louisiana. You've won 3 games in a row, and you're saddling up to go play at Ole Miss, right? And that's the same type of situation you put yourself in last year when Ole Miss came to Tiger Stadium, and it felt like a monster game, and LSU won. And at the time that LSU beat Ole Miss, even though they had lost to USC a month earlier, you still felt at that point like, okay, they can still do something here. They found a passing game. They found a pass rush. That's the identity. They'll figure out how to run the ball a little bit better behind that offensive line. Like, they can get this thing rolling. They're going to beat Arkansas. You felt like that things were okay because you righted the ship early in the season and you went and beat Ole Miss. And then you can set yourself up to do that again, even with the loss to Clemson. A loss to Florida, man, at home to that program that's been down for a few years, like, that just feels like it would be a gut punch in either scenario. So, like, in a situation where you're trying to go at a minimum 10-2, you can point to any game on the schedule and suggest, man, that could be a swing game. Like, I could say the same thing for at Ole Miss. I could say the same thing for South Carolina coming to Tiger Stadium. I'm not going to put that on Vanderbilt, but I could say it about Texas A&M. I could say it about going to Tuscaloosa. I'm not going to say about Arkansas coming to Tiger Stadium, but at Oklahoma, last week in Atlanta, people were drinking the Oklahoma Kool-Aid. Like, they were. People were going, well, Venables, that defense was top 30 last year, and they got Mateer coming in, and they got a new offensive coordinator. Like, they're going to, and I'm not quite there yet. I don't know about that offense in Norman after losing everybody from a terrible offense. So that's the last game of the season. That's going to have high stakes regardless. But I'm pointing to that Florida game because if y'all heard me talk last week about Florida, like, I think they're going to be decent. I think they're going to have a pretty good team. And when I turn on the highlight tape of DJ Lagway from last year, it's impressive. The highlight tape is significantly more impressive than the stat page. So it'll be at home. It's going to be hot. It's going to be a 6:30 p.m. kick. Tiger Stadium will be into it. But, like, I'm envisioning a potential 1-2. I'm envisioning a potential 3-0. And in either sense, I'm looking at that Florida game going, that's big. Because, I mean, if LSU comes out of the first 3 weeks and you can't lose to Southeastern, so at that point it'll be September 27th and you'll be 4-0. LSU at that point will be a top 5 team in the country, maybe a top 3 team in the country, and this town will be ready to burst at the seams. If it's 1-2 and then you beat Southeastern, you go to Ole Miss, like, this town's going to be ready to riot. Like that's the swing of emotions that I think can come in September alone. I mean, how many times did we sit here and think about an LSU trip to Gainesville like in late October? How many times have we sat here and just fixated on the weekend after Halloween with LSU and Alabama? That's when the emotions generally kicked into gear. And now that has been flipped on its head the last 5 years because LSU's played was such a high-profile opener and has lost. So I'm not disagreeing with ESPN here, but I just keep coming back and back and back to that Florida game, and it just feels like it's that spot on the schedule between two in-state teams that can't beat you, and before the SEC really ramps up, like it's a huge spot. And I think I can make a pretty compelling case that that's as big a swing game as there is on LSU's schedule. Looking at some of the other teams in the top 25 that ESPN is considering, we'll start with number 2 in the country. That's Clemson, and they say LSU. They read, this one's fairly obvious. Clemson opens the season at home against LSU, a huge game that will serve to show whether all the hype surrounding Clemson is warranted. Clemson's lost 3 of its past 4 season openers. That's an underserved storyline that Clemson's losing these games too, including 2 to another SEC school in Georgia. That is, of course, the Georgia Bulldogs. Winning is hugely important, but so is the way Clemson looks right out of the gate with an experienced team that returns its best playmakers on offense and some of its best defenders from a year ago. Here's why that eye test matters to perception. In those 3 season opening losses to Georgia and Duke, Clemson managed to score a combined 13 points and 1 total touchdown. That simply cannot happen with Cade Klubnik entering year 3 as a starter. So look, we all know that LSU has stumbled out of the blocks here. Clemson has too, and losing to Georgia is no sin. Losing to Duke is not great. So these two teams understand how massive the opening game is. Clemson's got a more manageable slate beyond that because the ACC is just more manageable, but a season opening loss is going to do damage to either one of these two teams. So that's a look at ESPN's top swing games here for everybody in the top 25. We'll come back and close out hour number 1 when we come back on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday shows brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Some of the best beef, quite literally, in the United States is just outside of Baton Rouge, and it can be in your freezer pretty quickly if you call my guy Sean Sagrera. I'm going to give you Sean's cell phone number at the end of this read. If you're interested in some of the finest prime Angus beef in the country, you got to call him, because everything that Sean's got on his farm at Sagrera Farms is prime. If you talk about intramuscular fat scores, you're talking 0 to 3 is select, 3 to 8 is choice, and you got prime that starts at 9. Sean's got cows on his farm right now that have been ultrasounded, and you're talking 13, 14, 16 on that score. If you love prime Angus beef and you don't want to ask questions about where your beef came from, you go pick it up where you always get it. I mean, how many DNAs are in that package you just picked up, and where did it come from, and are they using antibiotics improperly and steroids? You never have to ask those questions with Sean. You're getting prime Angus beef with its ground beef, talking about ribeyes, fillets, strips, skirt steaks, hanger steaks, all that you can have in your freezer from Sean Sagrera at Sagrera Farms. We're doing burgers on Friday night. Tomorrow night, it'll be Sagrera Farms Angus prime beef, and it's going to be fantastic. I cannot wait. Call Sean, 719-1723. It's in the 225 area code, 719-1723. Say, hey, I heard about you on Hunt Show, and I'd like to get some beef. He'll help you out up there at Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. They bring you our Thursday shows each and every week. Chandler Rome from The Athletic, former LSU beat reporter on the baseball beat, Reveille alum, LSU alum, in fact, covers the Astros. And he reported last night that Ethan Fry has signed a deal with the Houston Astros that's going to pay him nearly $1 million. Fry is getting $997,500. That is more than $195,000 over the slot value for Fry's slot at pick number 95, third-round pick. And this is such a great story for Ethan because he comes to LSU from Rose Pine, Louisiana, which is the size of this desk, okay? And he's a high school catcher that comes in the class with Brady Neal and Jared Jones. You still got Milazzo on the roster, still got Travinsky on the roster. And he comes in and you're going to sit. And he did. He didn't play very much as a freshman on a national championship team. He got to watch and see those guys and watch how a championship team goes about its business every day, but not a lot of playing time. And I went out there in the fall and watched him, and it was apparent early that he wasn't going to be a catcher. So they played him in right field. Wasn't awesome. Played him at first base. Didn't look very good. But he's a good hitter. And Jay Johnson said that when he was a freshman at LSU. Jay Johnson said, and this kid could be an All-American here. Like, Jay believed in him big time. Just his second year on the job and Ethan's first year at LSU. And then he comes back as a sophomore, and he's got a chance to play a big role on that team. You've lost Cruz, and you've lost Morgan and Jordan Thompson. You've lost Milazzo, and you've lost your Beloso and like some of the Dugas, like some of the real thump from that team. And they're looking for some guys to step up outside of Tommy White and then Bear Jones sliding in. And okay, well, maybe Fry's one of those dudes. And he tears his labrum. And they give him the option. They're like, okay, well, you can either get this fixed and miss the rest of the year, or you can try to play through it. Like, you're going to be hurting, but you can go, you're not going to hurt it worse. Just go, you can go play if you want. And instead of getting it fixed to serve his interest best, he gutted it out. And it didn't go well. Like, he did not have a good year, obviously. He hit .228 and didn't hit a home run. 34 games. And then he got his shoulder fixed, and he came back in the fall, and he's on a little bit of a pitch count, but he was feeling better. And then all of a sudden, he's in the lineup in a platoon spot because you've got Larson, and you've got Pearson, you got Brown, and then Fry's kind of in there. And all of a sudden, he just hit so much that Jay Johnson said, whatever, he's the DH. We'll platoon Brown and Pearson the rest of the way, and Larson's just going to have to sit. And what you end up getting is a guy with some of the biggest swings of the entire season. For the year, he hit .331 with 13 home runs. He drove in 50. But, like, the swing he made in that regional final on Monday, I will not forget. Because you forget about the Little Rock fiasco and you forget about what the final score was on Monday in that game, and they got through the regional, and then they swept the Super, scored a billion runs, and went up to Omaha and never lost. But if you could put yourself back in that moment in time after Little Rock puts a 5 spot up and LSU's down 5-1 in the early innings, like, I don't know about y'all. Maybe you had more confidence than me. I'm in the press box petrified because they haven't hit for 2 days, and Little Rock's seeing the ball like a beach ball, and they can't get Cano out, and it was just a nightmare. And finally, Fry delivers the 3-run double. And even though that 3-run double to right center field only drew LSU within 5-1, didn't even tie the game. At that point, it was in the early innings, and I exhaled and go, okay, they're going to beat Little Rock here. They're going to do enough to beat Little Rock. But it took that swing. There were 2 outs when he made that swing. If he pops up, you go to the 4th to the 5th, down 5-1, like, you're in trouble. Like, you're in trouble. And he makes the swing. He also led LSU in runs in the College World Series with 6 of them up in Omaha, had a big RBI double to left field that just it hit so hard. I was up in the press box, and the guy 2 seats down from me was with some national publication. I don't even know who he was with. He was between Alondra was between him and me, and he hit the ball, and it went over the coastal left fielder. Was kind of coming over and just whistled over his head. I said, what was the exit velocity on that? It was like 112 miles an hour, something ridiculous. And so Fry was just great this year. He deserves the $1 million he's going to get. I think there are a lot of LSU fans, myself included, that would have loved to have Ethan back in the lineup next year, but it just wasn't reasonable. He wasn't going to come back, burn that leverage to play left field, which is not a spot that you need to prove yourself in. You would just cost yourself a ton of money. You saw some seniors this year sign for, like Cade Woods was drafted in the 10th round. He signed for $5,000 in the 10th round. Like, you can't make any money doing that. So Ethan will get a really nice payday, and he'll go off and start his minor league career with the Houston Astros. I wanted to take this segment to just kind of acknowledge how awesome Ethan Fry did this past season, what his career path looked like, and then the paycheck at the end of it. Ethan Fry will move on to professional baseball, a 2-time national champ with a monster junior season in his back pocket. So all the best to Ethan as he starts his professional career. I wanted to close the hour with a huge shout out to the city of Baton Rouge, and most importantly, the Baton Rouge Children's Advocacy Center was there at LeBear's last night for their annual fundraiser. It was incredible, raised a ton of money. Ton of folks there. I know our crew was very well represented. Alondra was a celebrity waiter. Brian Haldane from Talk 107.3 was a celebrity waiter. I was there as well. It's just an unbelievable cause that I'm so lucky and fortunate to be a small part of every year. Baton Rouge Children's Advocacy Center does its part in helping young people who are witnesses to violent crimes at a young age. It's just such an unbelievable, vulnerable part of our population, such unfortunate circumstances. And the Children's Advocacy Center, I've walked the halls there, I've spoken with their counselors and the folks there that help the kids through that process. And they are just wonderful people, and they have such an unbelievable calling to do that. So it's an honor and a privilege to be there every year. And shout out to the city of Baton Rouge that came out last night to LeBear's and made it such an unbelievable event and raised a ton of money for a wonderful cause. So I wanted to mention that before we move forward. Hour 1 is in the books here. If you missed any, you can catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Talked about LSU's tight end group, spoke with Luke Johnson on Saints camp. He was there. If you missed some of that, you can catch it at Hunt on Saints. In hour 2, we're going to talk about Tony Petitti's ridiculous proposal for the college football playoff and then a Saints retirement outside of Tyrann Mathieu. We'll get to that after we pause for national headlines and Sports Center. Come back for the second hour on a Thursday. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.